Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today I'm going to rip the Minnesota Vikings GM, but I'm going to need some friends to join the party first.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan. I am going to dismember Luke Braun like a Francisco Goya painting.
And I'm Luke Braun. I do Locked On Vikings. I'm going to deserve it because I'm going to talk about running the ball, see if I can piss these two guys off.
That's the crew today. It's the Minnesota football party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota football party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with the Athletics' Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota football party. And it starts now.
Welcome in. I am Sam Ekstrom. Again, it's Locked On Vikings host Luke Braun and the Athletics' Arif Hasan. And we'll have our Thursday chat with Ron Johnson, who is practically giddy about the Gophers kicking off tonight against New Mexico State. We've got Kwesi, Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell press conference reaction out of the gate. A reminder to subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Leave a comment, leave a review. We would appreciate it. You'll get access not only to this show, but Ron Johnson's show, Superior Sports Talk, and your instant reaction postcasts after every game. Gentlemen,
Hey, quick question. Do we know what country Luke Inman is moving to?
It's probably not in this time zone. That's probably why he is so off the grid today.
We know which country he's said. We just don't know where he's actually.
Right.
Yeah. No one ever really knows. We hope to hear from Luke Inman. We'll find out. We'll find out where in the world he is. Arif, you and I just got back from Kwesi, Adofo-Mensah, and Kevin O'Connell press conference. Luke, you watched the press conference. Arif, I felt like there was a lot of, again, kind of subversion, like not really wanting to, show the deck of cards. Did you take away anything meaningful?
Boy, they did not like Kellen Mond or Sean Mannion. That seems to be a pretty clear takeaway. Anytime a guy that's only ever said compliments in pressers or in camp about the players on his roster, which totally understand, says it would not have been fair to him to have him play football, is that's a brutal one. That is a rough way to be kind. So
to be a backup in football, not even probably play, to be QB2 and not be a part of the plan.
The remote possibility that he enters a game would be doing him an unkindness. Yeah. That I think is pretty clear. We did not get much on like Ihmir Smith-Marsette or Armon Watts, why they decided to part ways with them, or Jesse Davis. It was all like Armon Watts had a fantastic camp. He was a great player. Anyway, we cut him. It was a very difficult player evaluation to understand. So that was the takeaway that I got. What about you?
There were a lot of hard conversations that they told us how hard they were and how bad they felt about them, but they didn't give the rationale behind a lot of it. We don't know why they are trying to hoard millions of dollars of cap space. We don't know why Ihmir Smith-Marsette was the one chosen to be waived and not someone more relevant. We don't know why they really like Ross Blacklock so much. And one of the things they did reveal, I felt like, was that he's not a starter and that Jonathan Bullard probably is. So Jonathan Bullard, week one starter, who would have projected that one in their pre-training camp prognostications? But I think that we need to get into more of these moves and kind of why, like what we think the rationale might be, Luke Braun, of sort of the 5 or so controversial personnel moves in the last 48 hours. Which one kind of raised your eyebrow the most?
For me, it was cutting Ihmir Smith-Marsette. Trading for Jalen Reagor, reclamation project. The draft compensation is not as bad as it feels. Like, fourth round pick, but it's not like it's a fourth round pick 2 years from now. And it's also conditional. So it could be a fifth round pick 2 years. So it's like, and a seventh, like whatever. I get it. It's a flyer on a guy maybe you think you can fix. Ihmir Smith-Marsette being cut to make room for him is kind of wild. Like, okay, he didn't win the punt return job. We knew that. But he still felt like the fourth best receiver in the room. I don't know. Maybe you guys saw more camp than me, but felt like he played well enough to be on a team, and we like didn't agree that Jalen Nailor had. And maybe it's just keeping their own guys over another one, but like on Locked On Vikings, I spent a whole segment going like, I don't know, maybe it's blocking. Like I was really struggling to figure out what that one was. And I can't really explain it. And that doesn't necessarily mean that I think it's the stupidest move ever. Like I disagree with it, but I also acknowledge there's probably something I don't know, or something I didn't notice in the tape because I'm just a dude. But that's the one that definitely raised my eyebrow the most.
Yeah, like unless they're super concerned, and I have no like evidence of this other than Mike Zimmer saying that Ihmir Smith-Marsette was like kind of a big talker and maybe a little bit cocky. Unless he's just a horrible influence in the locker room, it's hard to see any logical rationale that why he would be chosen when in 86 snaps last year, I mean, he kind of did something. When he was given a chance, he did something.
Yeah.
When he was given a chance this preseason, he did something early in games too, not just like at the end of games when, he's playing against grocery, people. I don't understand why that was the choice when you have three more years. He's got kind of like Jalen Reagor-ish speed, maybe not quite Jalen Reagor speed, but close. That's just confusing to me. Arif, do you have any inkling at all why they did this?
Yeah, first, good job on nailing the landing on that metaphor. But second, I would say that I would
grocery
say that,
people,
grocery
people,
yeah,
grocery
like
people are people
grocery
too.
People, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the best way, or the way that it makes the most sense to me, is if they think of Jalen Reagor as more than just a punt returner, if they see him as a contributor receiver, because then that means that the fifth receiver spot would be reserved for somebody who exclusively would be able to participate on special teams, should that be the only thing that they can do. And we know that Ihmir Smith-Marsette is not a special teams asset. I remember I said that in a column a couple of weeks ago, and somebody was like, I don't understand. He was like the Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Year or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. Most of these people were. But in NFL environments, Ihmir Smith-Marsette did not look comfortable with the punt return job. And it's not like he can compete for the kick return job. Kenny Wangu nearly made the Pro Bowl as a kick returner in 8 games, right? It's clearly his job, right? They didn't even, trot him out there as a kick returner. So I think that the fifth receiver spot is reserved for somebody that they feel can, if all he can do is participate on special teams, is the thing that he does. And in that sense, then maybe Jalen Reagor is seen as both a potential receiver and as a potential special teamer. Now, if Reagor wins the punt return job, maybe we'll see additional moves down the line where Jalen Nailor goes down to the practice squad, and if Ihmir Smith-Marsette lands on the practice squad, they elevate him back up. I don't know. But if Ihmir Smith-Marsette is seen as both a fourth string receiver and a non-entity at punt returner, then they don't have somebody who could exclusively participate in special teams. So that's the only way I'm thinking about it, is that the fifth wide receiver spot is actually first string ST. So that's the way that it makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, in terms of impact, this feels like D.D. Westbrook last year, who returned 22 punts fairly serviceably. But as a receiver, I don't see it. And I've quoted this already a million times. I talked about it on Superior Sports Talk this morning. I put it out on Twitter. Yards per route run, guys, 110 out of 110, Jalen Reagor last year. At Treadwell-like, worse than Treadwell.
Yeah, I was about to say that's very reminiscent of Treadwell. Yeah.
And that's how the Vikings reacted, the previous regime, when the Eagles took Jalen Reagor.
Brutal.
Awkward much in the locker room once he gets here? We haven't heard from Jalen Reagor yet, but I'm sure he's going to be asked, and I'm sure he hates being asked about it because he is the butt of every joke. Look at that. Look at Mike, positively giddy. It's the happiest he's ever been. Rick Spielman,
so
happiest he's ever been.
I'll say this about Jalen Reagor. So, I was talking to a couple of Philly people about this, and I was like, what's the deal, right? Because the Eagles were not the only people that saw Reagor as a first-round pick, right? Like if you talk to, people who are connected to other teams, they also saw Reagor as a first-round pick. Maybe not above Jefferson. Jefferson was very clearly, for a lot of teams, the fourth receiver in that draft. So the consensus seemed to be that he was fairly uninterested in playing football, and was emotionally uninvested in the team. His fights with the fans, his fights with kind of the media in general kind of disassociated him from football a little bit. He was in a tough place. Obviously, he wasn't physically where he needed to be. It didn't seem like he had the kind of dynamism that he had in college. It might be because of the way that he put on weight for the combine, even though he ran fast. I don't know if that's, an area where like a specific football drill is easier to do, but, kind of the whole weight of football moves is not as easy to do. But, he was out of shape, according to camp reports, both years that he showed up in the previous two camps. Now, now after a series of like fairly tragic events in his life, he's close friends with Jeff Gladney, also a TCU teammate who died in a car crash in May. His grandmother died in January. Apparently, this is the kind of reevaluation of his own life that he needed to be a little bit more focused. Something similar happened to Everson Griffin, if people remember correctly, and it sounded like he had entered camp with a lot more focus and a lot more a willingness and an attitude to play football with a sense of purpose, and his body was in shape, in a way that it hadn't been the previous 2 years. Now, we always hear stories, right, of how athletes are in the best shape of their life. Now, this is the year they're going to break out, and you never know if those stories are accurate, but there is something meaningful attached to it. So it could be that there is something here as a result of it. And the fact that it seems like the outside noise doesn't bother him anyway, because it very clearly bothered him and he was responding on social media and stuff like that, doesn't even bother him anymore, means that there might actually be something involved in a reclamation project here for Jalen Reagor that you wouldn't necessarily identify, like because Matt Khalil was always in the best shape of his life and then he wasn't, right? So like that there might be something there.
Kwesi spoke about focusing on the tools of Jalen Reagor, the skill set. And he had the same language about Ross Blacklock, almost like a scout would talk about a guy coming out of the draft. And Will Raggett's asked a very good question, like, how are you weighing your evaluation in the pre-draft process versus their struggles on the field the last 2 years? And it sounds like they're pretty focused on what they can do physically as a former first and a former second-round pick. And they get them not only for this year, guys, but they do get them for a second year. So they can see then, once they learn the offense, can they develop in their third offseason and then actually come to camp next year in their final year of those deals looking even better. So I do see a little bit of logic there trying to capitalize on 2 years of like high ceiling physical prospects. Luke, Braun, go.
It feels a little bit like when Troy Williamson got LASIK, and it's like, oh, this might be something. And like, I'm real happy for Jalen Reagor because he seems genuinely happier and like matters from a football perspective. It's one of these things like I gotta believe it I gotta see it to believe it. But we don't need him to become a breakout. Oh, look, now he's playing like the first rounder we thought he was. We need him to be like wide receiver 4. And if somebody in the wide receiver room goes down, he comes in as a wide receiver 3 and he's not a liability. That probably gives us enough to say, okay, we didn't overpay too bad for him. That feels like the expectation that's set based on what they paid, which is pretty minimal cap and day 3 picks. You're looking for a wide receiver 4. If he doesn't break out and this actually is the answer, and wow, he's got his head right and he's actually going to be the Jalen Reagor we thought he was at TCU. Holy crap. Yeah, that's a coup. But the expectation doesn't need to be that. And I hope that the Minnesota media market, while not the most polite all the time, a little better than Philly. So maybe that'll be good for him.
Right.
Will this
I think a good litmus
be
test
more
for this
successful than
question-
Josh Doxson? That's the bar to clear.
Right. Well, so I think a good
Maybe.
litmus test for this question was Jarius Wright a good draft pick? And I think for most people,
Yes.
most of the time, the answer would be yes, right? I mean, he was a 4th-round pick. He was consistent. He produced in some pretty big moments, but primarily he was a very good backup that you could rely on third down, right? You didn't expect him to be wide receiver 1. Nobody expected that except, maybe him, which is, his prerogative. That's what they paid for Jalen Reagor. And if he can be as productive as Jarius Wright, that means that even though his story in the NFL will be that he's a bust, right? It'll mean that the Vikings made the right move and that he had some redemption for this point in his career.
Last one on the press conference. Is Kwesi going to say anything interesting ever again? The USA Today story was juicy. The quotes were great. And I think it ruined it. I think he got too lambasted. He got questioned too hard on it. And he's completely shut down. It was a great honeymoon period. We had some good times with him. He was interesting. He was extremely, like, he came at football from a different standard of thinking. No more. It's over. He's now officially like the demure GM. Sad.
I was waiting for him in that presser to drop a time horizon, and I didn't hear him drop a time horizon. Yeah. I was very sad about that.
Yeah.
No.
We're not going to find out if we have a looser lips Kwesi until the combine again next year, right? Where you've got the podium, which he's going to be as tight-lipped as whatever, and then there's like kind of the after side session with local reporters where he's a little bit more informal, because he was fairly informal with us at the combine, and he shared some stuff off the record that you felt like were I to put this on the record, it might be cast in a poor light and become a big story, right? Now, if he tightens up in that session, that tells us that there's a lesson that he thinks he's learned and that he's not going to be open again. But if not, maybe this is going to be a situation where he's going to be able to pick and choose the moments where he can be a little bit more candid.
Kwesi's, the problem is that he believes everything is like the aggregate. All the decisions he makes are taking in all of these different variables, and nothing is black and white with him. So he's never going to give you a straight answer. He's going to say, well, it's part of the equation, or, this plays into it and this plays into it. But he will never tell you that a decision was made based on this factor or this factor. He's always going to lean on sort of that accumulation of information, which I think is going to become a frustrating buzzword down the road. There's the doorbell. Who is making a cameo on the football party?
Kwesi, oh my God.
Oh, it's Gophers Hall of Famer Ron Johnson, hours before the Gophers kick off the season against New Mexico State. Ron, are you fired up for tonight or what?
Yeah, it's New Mexico State, so it's good to get real football back. I think, honestly, it's going to take a while to really get back into this. Thursday nights, I'm not a fan of them. I do like night games, but for some reason this game just feels weird to me. It doesn't, like, I haven't got it yet. Maybe I have to get on campus and get under the lights and start to feel it.
Yeah. Is Jerry Kill, PJ Fleck, is it going to be much ado about nothing, or is there actually going to be something to write about tomorrow?
I don't know. You honestly just don't know. We know men make weird decisions, so who knows what Jerry Kill had for breakfast, how he woke up on what hotel he woke up in. If somebody Lawrence tailored him and sent some strippers to his room, or sent some 4 a.m. pizza to his room or something. So, you never really know how a coach wakes up and feels, just like players. Like, you really don't know where some of these players mentally when they get up in the morning, because you just never know. So with Jerry, though, hopefully being back in Minnesota, maybe he had a nostalgic feeling and he wants to leave out of here in good graces and not get booed out when they're losing, 48-12. So, maybe he will just shake the hand. I don't think there'll be a long conversation. If it is a shake, it's going to be one of those quick Harbaugh, Pat Fitzgerald type, firm handshakes, and then keep it moving.
Yeah, one question more for me, and then we'll go around the horn. But I wanted to ask you about Esezi Otomewo again. I know we've talked about it on the Ron Johnson show, but he's on the Vikings roster now. I think there was some question whether he was going to make it or not. Maybe it's not this year, but down the road, what do you think he can be in the NFL? Because I know you watched him closely as a member of the Gophers last year.
Yeah, in a 3-4, I think he fits well. In a true 4-3, he's kind of an undersized end, and maybe more like a Dwight Freeney, true to size. Dwight got bigger though. In a 3-4, and that's the key, is like he's not really a stand-up linebacker, but could he become a DeMarcus Ware? We don't know. If they do decide to keep him the entire season, we'll learn what he can and can't do from a 2-point stance. I know he did stand up for the Gophers a little bit, so he has the ability to stand up. He is a big, tall kid, So, one of those guys that might put on that, that freshman 15, as they call it, and get another, get some more weight to him, some more strength to him. Vikings strength and conditioning coach, Coach Keys, he mentioned how much they put into their offseason program, how much the nutritionist dives into these players now, the Gatorade refueling stations, all the stuff that is new as of the last 5-6 years. He'll have a chance to gain that weight. So I could see him finding a spot in that Y5, that 4I. I don't really see him as a true 3 or a nose, because of his length and his size. I think he becomes like a tweener kind of stand-up guy, 5-4I guy, where they can move him around, outside the guard and tackles, figuring out what he's going to do best.
We'll hit you with a few 53-man questions here, perhaps. Luke Braun, you got anything for Ron Johnson before he has to get to Gophers duty?
I kind of want to keep talking about Adofo-Mensah because for me, like, he's a developmental guy. He's a guy with a lot of stuff to learn, and that's okay. That's the kind of guy you're looking for in day 3. But for me, it feels like once those guys make a roster, that's like a huge step. Is there and this is me not knowing, this is my perspective. I don't know if there's a difference here, but from day to day, is there a difference between being like a guy on the 53-man roster who might not dress for as many game days or maybe only rotate in a little bit, but you're there, you're on the 53, versus being a guy on the practice squad on a scout team and doing those responsibilities instead? Is it easier to learn one way or another, whether you're on the scout team or on like the bottom parts of the 53?
No, it depends on your off the field mentality. They're all in practice together, so they're all in meetings together. Whether you're a practice squad receiver or a starting receiver, whether you're a practice squad DN or the fourth DN on the roster, they're all in the same meetings. They're all doing the same drills. They're all doing the same, with coach one-on-one stuff. They're all going through one-on-ones during practice. I think the biggest difference is going to be the opportunity for actual game time play, where is a long season. Somebody gets nicked up. Somebody's tired and gassed. He gets to go in and maybe only get 5-6 plays. He's playing on special teams. So that NFL speed, he's getting it. I equate that to, you look at like a guy like Tyus Jones playing basketball, for instance. Him being a 7th and 8th grader on varsity, was it a value to him, or should he have just continued to play little league basketball in his association? No, it probably was better because he was practicing against bigger, better guys. He was playing against bigger, better guys. And when he got a chance to play in games, he was phenomenal, ended up being a freshman starter and so on and so forth. So I think that's where you kind of look at these early opportunities to either practice squad or just be, the number 49 or 50 on the roster where you may or may not dress. I think there's a little bit to that because you are actually at some point possibly going to get some true game time situational play.
All right, so my question actually still has to do kind of with the Gophers, kind of with the Vikings. Now, the Vikings, maybe you could say the last missing piece on their offensive line is the center group. I know the Gophers have possibly the best center in the country, maybe the best center in the Big Ten. I don't know. I'm a little bit of a homer when it comes to that sort of thing, but I really do like John Michael Schmitz. But my understanding is that the center group in the Big Ten is maybe better than it's ever been. I don't know that much about the draft. I don't know that much college sports, so let me know if I'm wrong. But should the Vikings draft the Gopher center? If not, is there another center in the Big Ten you've got your eye
on? No, I haven't even dove into the Big Ten stuff just yet. From a Gopher standpoint, John Michael Schmitz. So one reason he came back was he got hurt in the bowl game. Nothing serious, but had a little injury in the bowl game. Didn't feel like he'd be able to go through off-season workouts. So he decided to come back. He also wants to be a doctor, or I think he already is heading towards his doctorate or, whatever he's going to do in his field. So extremely smart guy, a guy that really cares about off the field as much as he does on the field when it comes to classroom stuff and furthering his career. So drafting a guy like that, you have to really make sure you feel like he really, truly loves the game, because you don't want to draft a guy early because he is really good. But then he decides to say, you know what, I'm going to hang it up and go be a doctor. Because we were seeing that a lot lately now where guys who feel like they're going to make more in a different field than they will playing 3 or 4 years in the NFL. A lot of guys are just after 1 year, they're getting banged up and they're hanging it up. They're like, nah, let me go be a vice president of a company. Let me start working my way up. So like when I'm 40 and 50, I kind of have myself set. If I know I'm not going to get the Jeff Saturday type of career and money, that's where I think you have to really watch this season, see how he plays, how is his health, and does he seriously, because they're going to interview him, does he seriously want to do this? Like, is this really him, or is being a doctor more important? Which there's nothing wrong with that, but you want to make sure you get the right guy. As far as the rest of the Big Ten, I'd say in about 3 weeks we could talk about that. Off-season stuff, I take it with a grain of salt, to be honest, in college, because college rankings, it's all about hype. It's all about ESPN. Look at Spencer Rattler and all these quarterbacks for the last couple of years. They've been riding them like, oh man, this guy is the greatest, and then he doesn't play. Oh man, that guy sucks. Look at him. But it's all about hype. And I think that's where we're gonna like Arch Manning versus this kid out of Pasadena, California. Like, I'm interested in what they do in the next 2 or 3 years, because everybody's so high on kid out of my high school, Dante Moore, going to Oregon. He's better than Arch Manning now. They're saying he's the number 1 player in the country. All that kind of stuff. I want to see, is this high school hype or is this real college hype? And same for these college guys now. Is this off season just talk, or when they get in the games, are they really legit and are they really holding up to it? Because, we know Garrett Bradbury, where his deficiencies are. We'll see if Kirk Cousins being able to change the plays helps him out. We haven't seen that yet. November or September 11th, I think all eyes are going to be on that quarterback center exchange, some of the pre-snap stuff that Kirk's able to do. I think that's what we're really going to be excited about. And if it just looks bad and Bradbury's not the guy and Schlottman comes in or somebody, then yeah, I'd say you go after one of these centers in the draft.
Yeah, and he's one of those 24-year-old guys, too, I think. The Gophers' offense is so old. They got to be older than, like, some NFL teams with all these 60-year starters, which is crazy. Before you go, Ron, I got to have you weigh in on the big wide receiver topic. Jalen Reagor coming to the Vikings. Amir Smith-Marset waived. We don't know if he made it through waivers yet. Your thoughts on that deal?
You know what? From a kick return standpoint or punt return standpoint, punt can make or break a season. A muff punt here or there can really kill your game. Look at Beebe. He fumbled a punt, and then he did actually come back and win the game against Carolina in the end with a catch, but shouldn't have had to do that. You catch that punt, you're not having to redeem yourself. So I think the punt situation is extremely important. And so if you feel like, I think that's what they said, a Smith-Marset wasn't really giving them much in the offense that they felt like they had to have him, but they weren't really sold on his punt return ability. And with Jalen Reagor, we've seen him take a punt to the house. We've seen him consistently. He did it in TCU. He's consistently caught punts. He is extremely fast. So speed for speed, you're getting the same, speed guy that can take the top off. But now you do get a true home run opportunity punt returner, because fair catching it is easy, but if he doesn't look comfortable, even with the fair catches, there were Smith-Marset times where he's running around and you're holding your breath. Even though it's preseason, you're like, oh man, that didn't look routine. Like, he made that punt return or that fair catch look a lot harder than it had to be. And catching NFL punts is not easy. It is not, especially with guys barreling down at you. There's no halo rule like in college. So guys can literally kiss you on the neck while you're trying to, catch a punt. And so that's the thing I think is the toughest, when there's a guy breathing down your neck, blowing in your ear. You're trying to catch a punt. You're trying to decide, do I take this? Do I not? Smith-Marset maybe just, he wasn't the guy for it. A little Lance Stevenson, LeBron James.
Yeah, I was just thinking Lance
blow,
Stevenson, yeah.
But it just I think you get a lot out of it. And also we have to remember, this kid was the number 21, 21st receiver taken in player taken in the draft that year, one of the top 6 receivers taken. Philadelphia, I think their offense was trash at points. And so when you have a rookie quarterback, you have a trashy offense, there's sometimes the receivers aren't done justice. Look at all these other receivers that wanted to leave certain places because of their offense. And then, all of a sudden now the Eagles make a change, but, it's a little too late. Now they got, A.J. Brown, I think. And so when you bring in a guy, I think for Jalen Reagor, for them, they were like, you know what, we got our guy now. We think we got the number 1 receiver that we need. Jalen, you were drafted to be that. You're not. You weren't Justin Jefferson. But I think he could be just fine as a 3 and a 4 wide receiver with Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. It adds another guy that can run jet sweeps as well. all that kind of screens, all that kind of stuff. It gives you. But I think for the most part, it was punt return. They're going to go 3 wide, 1 tight end, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, 1 running back, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, and 1 receiver. A lot more than we think. So that 4th receiver, I mean, I think it's going to be him or Jalen Naylor. Probably Jalen Naylor out the gate because he's been here, and then he's going to be your punt returner just to make sure, hey, we get the ball back. Get the ball back to Kurt. That's all we need you to do. We don't need you to try to break it every time. Just get the ball back to Kurt.
He's Ron Johnson of The Ron Johnson Show, and he can beat some 26-year-olds in a bunch of stuff if you're watching on YouTube. That is a great list. Follow him at 3Ron Johnson on Twitter. As you go off screen here, Ron, I need a score prediction. Gophers tonight. What do you got?
I'm going to go like 48 or 49 to like 17.
So they don't cover the spread.
So I don't think,
and that's all I care.
Yeah,
about.
I don't think they beat them. I don't think they beat them by 36.5. That's a lot. I just don't know if PJ has that pettiness in him, but maybe he does. I do know if they run ISO and trap and counter, and Jerry can't stop it, I don't see PJ telling his running backs towards the end of the game to take a knee. Like, I think they'll keep running it. So it comes down to, can he stop it? Because this is a big offensive line compared to what they have. I'm excited to see Quinn Carroll. Like, some of these linemen that we wanted are back, and so I really want to see what Quinn Carroll can do. I mean, coming from Notre Dame, it's a pro style atmosphere, and so now you get a really big, smart kid back. So I think coming from Daniel Faalele, he has some big shoes to fill, but it's going to be fun to watch Quinn Carroll tonight too. That's not a sexy thing to watch, but I am looking forward to seeing what he looks like early, because if he looks good, really good against this team, then I'm not worried about Michigan State. But if he looks like okay and getting killed against this team, then, hey, maybe he wasn't what we thought he was coming out of Edina, and and maybe he wasn't cultivated the way he would have if he had just come here from the start. But hey, that's neither here nor there. It's time to play tonight.
Yeah, we'll be locked in. Thanks a lot, Ron. You'll be back on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Roundtable in the morning to break it all down.
Well, I appreciate it.
Right. But I got to know, does that even apply to Linval Joseph? And Eric Eager replied to me, and he was like, no, actually, Linval Joseph is positive in terms of the wins above replacement that he provides versus the contract value the Vikings provide for him. And I think the same will be true of Harrison Phillips, which is pretty rare for that position.
Make sure you're commenting below on YouTube as well what your favorite move is of Kwesi so far in his tenure as GM. Subscribe, like the video, all that. Here's mine. And Luke kind of spoiled it. And I got mad at Luke Inman for spoiling stuff last week too. So I'm equally as mad at you, Luke Braun. But the za'darius
I
Smith
stated
move,
that was my goal, to make both of you mad. So we're doing
It's true. It's
you
true.
succeed.
Called my
constantly.
shot.
za'darius Smith is a certifiable top 10 pass rusher in this league. In some years, he's been top 5. 2019, he was spectacular with Green Bay. And you get him with a very restricting cap hit year one. Your guaranteed money is like a quarter of the total potential value of the contract. You team him up with Danielle Hunter, and you found ways to found that money without like lengthening, Dalvin Cook's contract or kicking money down the road on bad contracts. They did kick the money down the road on some other contracts, but players that I'm more okay with than like a Dalvin Cook. So for that, I think he deserves a pat on the back. I do think there are a number of moves that leave me scratching my head. And the fact that I'm not more thrilled about some of the other stuff is a little concerning to me, but I think I'm willing to give Kwesi the benefit of the doubt when it comes to some of these cut down day moves. Whether you're a fan of the draft maneuvering or not, it was definitely polarizing. But I am willing to see how this plays out, because I think everybody deserves like a year or two just to get their feet under them and see if their system works out. Any thoughts on just overall, of the, 50 transactions that have been made in 9 months? Are you in favor of most of his moves?
Yeah, I think my biggest criticism of Kwesi is, instead of the individual moves that he's made, it's the overall approach to the offseason he's had, which is one that is very similar to Spielman's, where they think that they have the ability to ride the line between rebuilding / reloading, I think is the way that people talk about it now. But like riding line between, keeping a championship window open and aggressively pursuing that window by supplementing a win now type roster, while at the same time finding ways to maximize the amount of developmental upside that your roster can have and the amount of youth that you can have in the roster in order to rebuild, and acquiring picks to that end. That I think is extremely difficult and not generally a goal worth pursuing. I think that you have to commit one way or the other. The Rams committed one way to winning now, and the Bengals a couple of years ago committed the other way to rebuilding, and then they both ended up in the Super Bowl, right? So I think that there's ways to do it. I think it's pretty rare to be able to do it. I think even the teams that have an explicit infrastructure to do it, like the Seahawks, end up failing to do it. So I don't love that, but within the framework of that vision, if we think that that vision is a good vision, I think that overall, most of his moves have been good rather than bad. I think that he has generally created positive value. I think that the biggest issue with the Lions trade is that he signaled that he's willing to take below market rates for trade downs in the first round, which is going to impact his ability to generate opportunity going forward. He should know that as a finance guy. But, I like, things like the Za'Darius Smith move. I like things like the Harrison Phillips signing. I understand the Michael Pierce, versus Harrison Phillips kind of situation. And I think that all makes sense. There are some moves that don't make a ton of sense. I still think Armon Watts for Blacklock for what is essentially upside and another year of control on that contract. That one doesn't make sense to me. There are a couple of moves here I don't like, but overall, I like what he's done within the framework of what he's attempting to accomplish. I don't like what he is attempting to accomplish.
Yeah, well stated.
I pretty much agree with that. I think a lot of what he's done is really smart, and I think it's not hard to see what he's trying to do here. And a lot of it just feels like you're just transitioning from a Zimmer-built team to an O'Connell and Donatel-built team. And I think there's a lot, like right now, cut down day always feels bad, especially when you go to a new scheme, because you're going to get a lot of draft picks and people that had a developmental plan, but the guy who knew that plan doesn't work here anymore. And so you're going to lose a lot of guys that maybe they would have stuck by if it was the old regime, would have stuck by guys like Chad Surratt or Kellen Mond, give them another year, see if they come around, that kind of thing. And so you're kind of purging, like we've purged a whole bunch of value of rookie contracts, and it feels really bad, but it's part of the transition. It's really hard to make that kind of judgment. This is not a 1-year plan. This is a 2-year, maybe a 3-year plan to get to something else. And what's interesting is it's still unclear. The biggest question is it's unclear if Kirk Cousins is a long-term thing for the Vikings or a short-term thing for the Vikings. They kind of deferred that decision. And if they defer it again next year, they are just going to sort of sit floating in this. We've kind of got a quarterback. We kind of don't. And he's expensive and it's hard to build around him. And you're going to just keep floating in this place we've been floating in since 2018.
The no trade clause is probably the worst decision that was made to lose that flexibility going into next year. And if they are forced to make those 1-year decisions going forward where Kirk is holding their feet to the fire to get that no trade clause, well, then you put yourself in a little bit of a bind, but it's not the worst thing ever if it's only 1 year. So I'm not gonna overreact to that. And I do think that for, like Arif said, for the goal of remaining competitive, yeah, Kirk probably was the best quarterback for this team. It just maybe wasn't the best approach going in to try to like run it back with mostly the same guys. You guys want to do some nerdy stats?
I hate
because I've got
stats.
one.
I hate eggheads.
Yeah, who needs them? I've got one. I mean, if you guys don't have enough stats in your back pocket, how about this? Jalen Reagor. PFF is a heck of a tool. He is the second highest rated punt return grade of any punt returner that had 25 or more punt returns last year. Second highest. Do you guys want to guess number one? I love guessing games.
I didn't pay a bunch of attention to punt returners last year. I'm going to guess it was not D.D. Westbrook.
No. Jakeem Grant, number one. But Jalen, number two.
Miami, right?
Despite having a muff. No, Jakeem is Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. What was I thinking of?
Yeah, 2 games against the Vikings. That'll do it.
Yeah, 2 games against the Vikings.
Nerdy stats. Luke Braun.
All right, I got one. comes from the 2021 Rams. We're pretty relevant to our interests right now. When they ran one of their staple plays, which was duo out of 3x1, 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, 3x1. When they ran duo out of 3x1, they averaged 4.9 yards per play. This mostly was a 1st and 10 run for them. This is like a staple, very vanilla, very kind of work a bunch of these in every single game, no matter what. And they got averaged setting up a 2nd and 5. Most people would call that a successful play. When they didn't run it a lot on 2nd and long situations, but when they did, they averaged 8 yards a play. That is also going to be a staple of the Vikings. We've already seen it in preseason and camp. It's something they've run a ton. They'll put all kinds of bells and whistles on it that, of course, they're keeping close to the vest. But for now, that is something that you should look for when the Vikings offense gets going. That's duo is a 6-on-4 up front. You got all 5 linemen and the tight end up against 4 defensive linemen usually. And if that starts working, the way defenses will respond to it is by flattening out the front more and bringing more guys up, not just into the box, but up onto the line of scrimmage, like bear fronts and stuff. And the key to that is that running that duo play with a wide receiver bunch, A, helps blocking, right? Everybody's a lot closer, so you can get a KJ Osborne in there, or that was Cooper Kupp for the Rams. But B, if you can set up 3x1 bunch and have enough of a run threat where you don't even need to do play action, they're just going to start flattening out their front, and you're just going to have more room to run behind guys. That's where the Rams unlocked a whole bunch of the passing offense that took them to the Super Bowl. Not necessarily even, they did use play action and keepers, and that was part of it. But even on non-play action plays, that sort of interaction in that particular play and that particular formation was huge. So that's my nerdy stat, 4.9 yards per play just on those 1st down runs. That particular play call.
Luke will not get football nerd cred for not having used the word surface to describe the changes in the defensive front structure. That is unfortunate. No points to Luke Braun.
No time horizons.
Hate to see
it. My nerdy stat was actually going to be about the piece I was going to write for The Athletic tonight, but actually I was looking something up as we were discussing, I don't know, duo runs or some insider football stuff. Instead, I wanted to look up pass rush win rates for Blacklock and Armon Watts. And this is interesting. The pass rush win rate, a statistic that is used by both ESPN and PFF to describe what happens when a defensive lineman and an offensive lineman interact with each other, who wins that rep without, counting pressures because the quarterback might have gotten rid of the ball quickly, or counting pressures as wins because the quarterback held on to the ball too long, who wins in the first basically 2.5 seconds of a pass rush rep, which translates into pass rush pressure going forward. It's a much better stable statistic for predicting wins, losses, and pressures. The pass rush win rate for Armon Watts last year was 11.1%. The pass rush win rate for Ross Blacklock was 11.1%. They tied, which I find pretty interesting given kind of the general consensus that we have that Armon Watts is a better player than Ross Blacklock, which I also think is true. I don't think that pass rush win rate defines the totality of how good a player is. But I find that one's kind of interesting, an identical pass rush win rate. Now, Blacklock, I believe, ended up with a slightly better pressure rate and stuff like that, but that's just kind of, random asides. Like it might have to do with, opposing quarterbacks holding on to the ball, like I said, or offensive linemen making, mistakes that, don't get counted and stuff like that.
I feel like Watts would have played a little more nose-ish role than Blacklock as well. When
that's
Pierce
another bit of
hurt.
context. Yes.
And I think if you go back to 2020, I think Blacklock was like 137 of 137 in like a major PFF category. It might have just been overall.
I think it was in run rank, I want to say. But either way, his pressure in 2020 was not spectacular either. And so if you compare the 2020 seasons, Armon Watts is way ahead. Yeah. Well, he performed better. I don't know if he got better, right? There's a lot of things that go into a player's performance. Sometimes it's who you're up against. Yeah. Sometimes, it's just random.
Super true.
Speaking of Vikings cuts that got claimed by the Bears, Ihmir Smith-Marsette just broke like 2 minutes ago.
You're kidding me.
Oh,
I'm not kidding you at all. Tom Pelissero 5 minutes ago.
That's so funny. Armon Watts, Ihmir Smith-Marsette. Let's go.
He's like wide receiver 2 now there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
The Bears.
Like, well, I think I saw a Bears writer basically saying like, well, who on the Bears receiving unit is actually better than Amir Smith-Marset? They better claim this guy. And I was like, frankly, surprisingly honest.
It's kind of a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amir
He's gonna beat out
Smith-Marset
Vale as
tweets,
well.
"New beginnings, prayer hands." Yeah, so now not only will Christian Watson and Jamison Williams be connected to the Vikings forever, now Amir Smith-Marset rounds out the trifecta within the division. That's just great.
The Vikings are giving like lots of opportunities for in-division rivals to show them up, right? The Lions with the trade, the Packers with the trade if Christian Watson turns out to be good, the Bears a couple of times because of these waiver claims. Like there's a lot of opportunities that the front office is giving for people to put egg on their face. This is like really interesting.
This feels like a lesson
Bears are
Kwesi's
just
gonna learn
collecting
in like 2
Vikings.
years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is there's well, I mean, it could be a positive lesson, like, hey, the lesson is I was right and I should keep doing this. But I'm
True.
worried that that's not the case.
Yeah, when Amir Smith-Marset catches like a runaway dagger touchdown to send them to 1-4
Against the
after they
Vikings.
just lost in London, you're going to be like, maybe we should care that they're in the division.
There's some
Well, I mean,
serious
they didn't specifically make a
scuffle
deal with the Bears.
possibilities.
This wasn't an in-division trade. But yeah.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah,
a
there's a lot
Packers
of
loss in there too that matters.
You had to see this one come. Everyone was tweeting yesterday, yep, he's going to the Bears. He's going to the Packers. It was known. It was a known fact that he was going there. I think we've got time for one more short topic and then some party fouls. Make sure to check out lockedonpodcast.com/Minnesota as well for all of our listens and care11.com/lockedon for links to every show. What would surprise you schematically 10 days from now, week 1, if the Vikings just rolled out some package that would just leave your jaw on the floor? What would it be?
I'd be stunned if they used a lot of 2 tight end.
Yeah,
That
I
just
guess
feels like
that's
they're not
about
going to
it.
do any like. It feels, I don't know. I've spent a lot of time trying to familiarize myself with McVay offenses, and it feels like exactly what they did, the Vikings are doing. So any departure from what the Rams did last year would be a surprise. But there's, for all the talk about like tight end depth, they're going to have one or none on the field the lion's share of the time. You might have, your bigger package is probably going to be 21 personnel with CJ Ham, and he'll kind of functionally be your second, like, tight end size player, second kind of blocker player. But if they went 2 tight end a lot, the only reason that would happen is if your tight end is getting his butt kicked in blocking and you need to start making those 2-on-1s. But that feels like a move you don't make week 1. That feels like something you have to get fed up with it over a couple of weeks to start doing that.
Yeah, I don't know that
Yep.
there's a specific package they could use a ton that would surprise me. It sounds like they really want, like, my understanding, and I don't know if it was because you said this explicitly to me, Sam, and I am repeating it as if it's an insight of my own, but my understanding is that they want to be a lot more flexible in the personnel packages than the Rams were, right? And they have the personnel, I think, to be able to do that outside of, like Luke said, the tight end depth. But the thing is, Ben Ellefson, an argument that I won, by the way, Ben Ellefson is a starting quality blocker, right? I lost a lot of arguments on our 53-man show, but I got to take my W's. But Ben Ellefson is a starting quality blocker as a tight end, right? And so if your package has it such that you're doing a lot of play action and Ben Ellefson stays in for pass protection, for your play, which is how you get a lot of people always see, oh my God, I can't believe they put the tight end on this like all pro edge rusher. Well, that usually happens because it's a play action look, and that's the blocking assignment in the run action that you're working off of. And sometimes that's just what happens. You maybe want to minimize it, but you're never going to be able to disguise your run without making it look like the run that it was. So I think that you might have a situation where you've got a lot of 2 tight end that looks like those run looks that give you play action. And I could foresee a bunch of 2 tight end sets that come out of that, even though there's only 3 tight ends on the roster, right? So I get kind of what that would look like. There's not a ton of personnel, but a 6th offensive lineman like Blake Brandel out there a lot. Yeah, sure. Why not? That sounds right to me.
Yeah.
4 wide receivers out there a lot. Yeah, sure. I could see it. I don't know. There's a ton that, put Kene Nwangwu and Dalvin Cook on the field at the same time. I don't know. That makes sense. It feels like there's a lot of flexibility in the way that the offense is approaching things and the way that Kevin O'Connell wants to do things. But yeah, every new coach kind of tries to transmit that idea. I do think that there is some teeth to that in this case.
Yeah, I guess the only thing that would shock me is if they were just like Clint Kubiak's offense, where there wasn't a lot of motion, there wasn't a lot of predictability. What if Kevin O'Connell is just wicked conservative? He's just like frightened by the moment. He doesn't want to make bold decisions. That would be
they kept doing
shocking
it this last year.
and
I didn't want to disrupt
disappointing.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, they were 11th in offense. Why would I want to change anything?
don't want to upset the apple cart.
CJ Ham all day. Party fouls, gentlemen, our tradition to end the show. We have animation. Let's run it. I love the spilled cup at the end of that video. My party foul for this week. What did I have? Oh, yeah. Back to the 53, man. I think I lost the most sleep, and by losing sleep, I'm talking about losing actual sleep over this. Blake Lynch. I mean, I'm hurt worse.
Oh, yeah.
About Blake Lynch than Zach Davidson, I think, because I can actually see where Davidson like sort of played his way out of that job. But I felt like Troy Dye played his way out of that job, and Blake Lynch played his way into it, and yet short shrifted. So, and no surprise, picked up by the team that was just here and saw him, and they probably said, that number 48 looks pretty darn good. Wish he was on our team. Oh, now he is. So wait till the NFC Championship game when Blake Lynch is filling in for an injured Fred Warner and intercepts Kirk Cousins in the flat. Party foul.
Will Kirk Cousins be playing for the Packers or?
Trade deadline. Kwesi can't resist himself. Just he'll swing a deal. Maybe actually for Jimmy G. Man for man.
I'm taking the Ihmir Smith-Marsette one. Come on, man. That you had an explosive deep threat wide receiver. Struggled as a returner. Don't give him that job. You had Jalen Naylor in the building. Didn't even try him. And defended that. I think that Arif, you asked that in the presser, right? And he said, yeah, we didn't have enough reps to go around, so we just gave them all to one guy and then cut him.
But Thomas Hennigan like somehow found a way to get reps.
Yeah. So you possibly had a returner in the building, didn't try him, traded for a new returner, and then cut a guy that could have been useful to you from scrimmage, who now plays for a division rival. Feels like you made a couple left turns there, and now you are staring down the barrel of getting directly punished for it. And if that happens, if Ihmir Smith-Marsette catches a big long pass week 5 against the Bears, or in week 18 and the Vikings need that game, they'll deserve it.
All right, I'm going to build off of that one. I'm going to say my party foul goes to both the Jets and the Vikings for the way that they approached roster cuts. Now, we have just discussed how trade happy Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been, particularly in acquiring players, but also in trading away Jesse Davis. And he, unfortunately, had more opportunities to trade players that other teams very clearly wanted, did not do it. The Jets had 6 players claimed off of waivers. The Vikings now, with the addition of Ihmir Smith-Marsette, have had 3 players claimed off of waivers. That means that teams were willing to accept that contract that they were on and possibly could have traded another 6th or 7th round pick. And if this is an organization that believes in 6th and 7th round picks, as they so clearly do, then they should have traded Kellen Mond. Them not trading Kellen Mond is buck wild to me. Just waiving him. Like I said, there were teams that thought of him as a 2nd round grade, and he was picked up by the Browns, right? Obviously, some team wanted to pick up his contract.
2 claims that we know of.
Yeah, 2 claims. Yeah. And we know that Ihmir Smith-Marsette was a player that teams were interested in. When we know that Armon Watts is a player that teams were interested in. And so to not get some value, if you're the kind of team that tries to extract, blood from a stone, try to get as much small amounts of it, like you traded Jesse Davis for a 2024 7th round or 2025 7th round pick. If that matters to you, then you absolutely can get something for Kellen Mond. That is wild to me. So that's my party foul. There's a bunch of, not every team that has every player that was on waivers claimed should have traded that player. Maybe it wouldn't have happened. But, if you got like 3, one of them is a quarterback. If you got like 6, you should have made some more moves.
So the Mond revenge game is not till 2025. Got a ways until
when he takes over for.
We have no idea what team he's going to be playing.
Deshaun Watson.
We don't got to talk about that quarterback.
Oh yeah, one Jacoby Brissett injury away from Kellen Mond snaps in Cleveland.
Locked On Sports Minnesota gives you endless Vikings talk with local experts. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel, get the videos, or you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. It's free. It's available. Please check us out. It's Ron Johnson Show, Superior Sports Talk, Minnesota Football Party, and our instant reaction postcasts. Luke Braun and I teaming up for that after Vikings games. For Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, Arif Hasan of The Athletic, Ron Johnson of The Ron Johnson Show, I'm Sam Ekstrom, also of The Ron Johnson Show, and Locked On Sports Minnesota at large. This has been the Minnesota Football Party. Director Matt DeBritz. Thanks for watching.